Hi, welcome to the Lynn Lowdown. I'm Cal Anderson, one of the rotating hosts. Today we're going to talk about bees, producing honey, and why it's important to our ecology. Today we have Rudolph. He raises bees and he produces honey. So we're going to talk a little bit about that process. So you can do it right here in the North Shore in your backyard. But welcome to the show first.
Thanks for having me.
Let's get out of these so we can talk amongst ourselves a little better. So, the natural process of bees. They're all out there. People know they do honey. People are afraid of bees, but should we really fear bees?
No, we shouldn't fear honeybees. Honeybees are the gentle breed of the bees. They have one job. They like to make honey, pollinate flowers, and store honey. That's it. To store honey and pollinate flowers.
Well, that's the important thing about the title. Now, the title, people have been telling me, gee, that sounds pretty ominous and dire. When the bees die, we die. But it's really to underscore the importance that cross-pollination of virtually all of our foodstuffs on the planet is done by bees, and it's important.
Right. About 70% of our crops are pollinated by bees.
Now, I've heard people say that, gee, it's not that dire. We could do artificial pollination, but why wreck a perfect process that is natural?
Yeah.
And is just as natural as the sun coming up.
Yep, bees are ready for that job. They are busy and they're really important to our ecosystem.
So, do bees live in all 50 states in our country?
I believe they do. In fact, recently it was in Iceland, and they had beehives in Iceland.
Oh, so they're prone to what, temperate zones? They do hibernate in the winter, or?
Yes, yeah. The whole colony goes into a ball for the whole winter and keeps the queen warm. And so it's really important for them to have enough honey to survive the whole winter. And then when spring comes, they're ready to go.
I see. So the honey is produced by the bees for the bees, but humans found out it's a darn good food too.
Yes, it is.
I've always been fascinated by the colony and the hierarchy of the community of bees. Can you tell us about the queen, the drones, and just how does that all work?
Well, the queen, after she gets fertilized, she comes back and she can lay up to 1,000 to 1,000 to 2,000 eggs a day over a 5 to 8 year cycle. So she's the bee that lasts the longest time. The worker bees don't last that long. They can last a couple of months and then they move on. You know, they pass away.
I see. So the queen is in charge of the colony. And I understand that there's things that certain bees do. There's the gatherers, is that the right word?
Right.
They go out gathering the honey, the nectar from flowers.
Yep, there's foragers, nurse bees, and there's bees that clean the house. So they all have jobs as they go through life.
Wow, just almost like humans. So how does it all work? You got the queen in charge of everything. And the worker bees go out and they gather the pollen. And this is what's important about flowers and flowering plants, is because bees don't derive anything from greens. It's always going to be flowers. So then what happens? They go back to the hive?
Yeah, so the bees collect nectar and pollen. The nectar they make into honey to use for a food source.
This is in their bodies through a metabolism?
Yeah, they kind of exchange the nectar around until it's just right, and then they put it into a cell, a little cell, and they fill it up with wax when it's just right, and that's honey.
So the bees produce the wax as well?
Yes, the nurse bees produce most of the wax. So when they're young, they have lots of wax, and that's one of their first jobs is to start making the nest, the hive work, more functional.
I understand honey is almost, could be considered a perfect food, in as much as you don't have to refrigerate it after it's open. It's got self-preservation properties to it. Yeah. Is that true?
That's true. In fact, in the colonial days, they used comb, honey in the comb, and just left it like that, and it would last a whole year.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So that means it's good for us too.
Oh yeah, it's great.
You are what you eat.
Some of my neighbors really like the honey because they feel it helps their allergies.
And helps build immune systems in general?
Right.
Wonderful. Now, how do we translate what happens naturally in the wild, so to speak, to the human level? how do humans cultivate bees? I see you've brought some apparatus with
so
you.
right here we have one of the hives. This is actually a foam hive. A lot of people use wood or
Yeah, it's
foam.
pretty light, actually.
Yeah, I like
Can
it
we
because
open
it
this?
keeps them nice and warm.
Oh, look what's inside.
So inside we'll have frames. This
I
is
can smell the honey wax.
So we have 10 frames in the hive, and I got one here right for you. It's got no bees on it, but we have some honey. This is the nectar that's being processed into honey, and then you can see these ones are completely sealed. These are capped off, and so those are ready to go. You can stick your finger right in there, and that's perfect honey to eat.
Makes me want to have some tea. So this is a perfect six-sided cell.
Yep.
Isn't nature wonderful?
It's amazing.
I mean, how does the bee know to do that? And then it interconnects. And also, this they're using as the model for a lot of the aircraft now.
Oh, wow.
To keep the walls light, they're doing a honeycomb pattern of composites, and then they just put a resin over it like fiberglass, and it's the same idea. Integral structure, but really very much weight.
And this is also where they'll lay their young. They'll put the eggs in there, and they go through a few stages to develop, and then they'll hatch.
Amazing.
Yep.
So now, once you have this honey, and how long would it take to fill up this tray, you call it?
Yeah, well, sometimes there's usually 2 harvests, one in the spring and one in the fall. It really depends on how the flow goes, how the plants come up.
Then what you do after you get this? How do
So
you get
after
the
we get
honey
this-
from
Yes.
the combs?
We'll take all these frames out and we'll scrape the wax right off, and then we put them into this machine here.
Ah,
Yeah, and it spins the honey right off of the.
I see. They just go down into this framework,
Yep,
and
the
it
frames
spins
go right
around.
in here, and
It's a
spins.
centrifuge.
Yep. And then we
is
just
what it
empty it out here through a spout into a bucket, and after we do take it out of there and put it in a bucket, we sieve it so that we take all the wax particles and any other miscellaneous items, little bits out of the honey, and it's basically just pure raw honey. There's no need to do anything.
This is an artificial honeycomb?
Yeah, so no, this is called a plastic frame. So if you look at it, has the same shapes as the comb, and that just gives them a little something to start with.
Oh, I see. I got it. So, if somebody were to want to get involved in an urban setting, how do they do it?
Well, first thing you should do is learn about bees. Learn about having a hive, and enjoy doing it. That's the number one thing.
Are there any local restrictions or laws or inspectional services rules regarding? I would think this might fall under livestock. Sometime.
Well, yeah, it's actually it's agriculture. There are rules for Massachusetts, but they're not very detailed, and most people can have a hive in their backyard. If you really want to learn more, it's good to join one of the local associations. The Essex County Beekeepers Association is a great resource.
I think we have a brochure, and there might be a graphic up about it. So they cover all of
Essex County. Yeah, there's one in every counny. So if it's too far for you, you might want to try a different location. But here in Lynn, this is where we go. It's a great group of people, and you learn a lot from learn a lot about beekeeping.
Now, what if somebody finds out from their neighbors that they might have somebody who's very allergic to bees and their stings, and they don't want to be involved with the bees?
Well,
how can they be involved?
Well, they can be involved in the Beekeepers Association. If you want to put a hive in your backyard, it's really important that you talk to your neighbors about what you're going to do and what they think, and usually maybe give them a little bribe with honey, because everyone likes honey.
That's always good. Now, the other thing they can do is just plant more flowering shrubs.
Yeah.
Now, it's interesting you mentioned honey, because I want to see the finished product. So after you spin it in the centrifuge and it comes out kind of like into a raw vessel, then you package it?
Yep, we sieve it and then package it, and it's ready to go.
Wonderful.
Pure raw honey.
Now, we have all this raw process here. It's time to unveil the finished product. So now we have John, the honey-bearing bear, with some finished product. Come on up. You usually find it in bottles. This one's got a handy flip top to it too. Sometimes they're private labeled, sometimes they're made for other stores, etc. But the finished product is always sweet, delectable, and you can spread it with a honey spreader. This makes me want to have some tea. You know. Anyway, I think that's about time to wrap up the show. Anybody interested, make sure you contact the Essex County Beekeepers Association. I think there's a graphic being run. And don't fear bees, don't swat them. They're not wasps, they're not hornets. Those are the aggressive ones, and even those you shouldn't really fear. Just be aware of them. Thank you, Al, and thank you, John. And until next time, keep loving Lynn!